Good afternoon, everybody on SGLDC. Thank you for joining me. My name is Jensen, I'm from SLS, and today we have our awesome guests, Theophilia and Derek. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yep, hi, I'm Theophilia. I teach geography and I am from Choa Chu Kang Secondary.
I'm Derek. I teach math and music and I'm from Woodlands Primary School.
Okay, thank you. And before I jump into our topic today, which is about R19, let me take a quick moment to introduce where we are in our current stage of development for SLS. So right now, SLS is developing more modes and contexts for teaching, for example, in self-study. And for those who are wondering about AI, all this recent buzz about ChatGPT and all that, don't worry, we got you covered. The next phase of SLS, as you can see in our diagram over here, is about enabling AI or integrating those AI features into SLS. All right, so find out more at the TCEF booth, which I'll be mentioning at the end of this presentation again. Okay, so let's jump back to R19. Derek, Theophilia, can you tell me what's the main feature we are going to be discussing today? Any guesses?
I think the discussion component is one of them.
Okay.
The planner as well, and quick assign.
That's right, yeah. So as you can see on the big picture, the planner is the highlight of today's discussion. So without further ado, let's jump into that. So if you look at my screen, which is the home page that you'll see after 7 June, right below announcements over here, you'll notice the planner. But let me show you another way you can access it as well. Okay. So when I click on my class group, you'll see under the tabs here that there's a new tab that says planner. All right. So far, so normal. All right. You have your day, you have your week, you have your month. All right. But what I want to highlight over here is the ability to create not just a new event. So let's just say I create a Spotlight. And after I create this event, you notice that actually there's a plus sign over here, which allows me to quickly assign an activity or quiz. Derek, if you don't mind, I notice you have a very nice watch. Right, could you help me time how long it takes for me to create an activity?
Sure.
All right. So could you help me count down?
Ready? 3, 2, 1.
All right, so I'm going to create an activity. Activity is created. And let's call it Spotlight session. Okay, and I'm going to create a discussion component, which is one of the new question types we have. Okay. I'm going to cheat a little and just paste the questions I've already prepared beforehand and save. All right? Derek, how long did that take?
Wow, that took 25 seconds.
25 seconds. Wow, that's a new record. So I would really like to encourage all those out there to try after 7 June, see how long it takes for you to create a lesson as well. 25 seconds or less. All right? See if anyone can beat my high score. Okay. So I've already prepared a lesson beforehand. Let's take a look at it. I'll be asking Derek and Theophilia to fill this up about how excited they feel about Release 19, as well as what are some new features they look forward to, okay? So as I introduce more features, don't mind if you guys could just make some posts about this. So while they're doing that, let me talk about the new question component bar, which I hope that you all notice over here. Below the text media component, I just would like to just draw your attention to the app and websites over here. So previously, you had to go to another page in the SLS info site, and you have to toggle between that as well as the lesson authoring to find your app or find your website and then paste it over here. No longer do you need to do so. Now everything is all within the sub page and you can easily choose what websites or apps to feature. Moving on to the next category, the question components are still quite similar, but I'd like to draw your attention to the free response question. So over here, you can actually change the response size of the free response question for the student answers. So for those who especially teach languages, mother tongue, or humanities, for example, I'm sure you all know that if you give your students a short space versus a bigger or long text box, the students will write more or write less depending on what you give them. I hope that you will appreciate this feature after 7 June. Okay, moving forward, under the interactive category, you'll notice the new discussion component, which I've already highlighted above, and I'll be showing very shortly. Okay, and under display, you'll notice a new component called page break. So page break is quite simple. It's something like a quiz, but basically within an activity, you can create multiple pages. So if you notice over here, 1, 2, 3. And last but not least, it's one of my favorite parts of the new component bar, which is the ability to choose your last 3 question components over here. So if you're creating, for example, an MCQ quiz, you'll notice that it appears here, and you can just click on it very quickly to create that question component again. So let's go back to the discussion component and let's see what Derek and Theophilia have to say. So let's see what Derek has. Oh, Derek, Oh, that's a very nice meme. Okay. Could you share more about how you feel?
When I first saw the release log, I was really very interested to see that there were many features that were coming out for this release. And I think the two main features that I was looking forward to is the dynamic links and the ability for us to actually expand and collapse the student responses for free response questions. I think this will enable teachers to do a lot more for lessons.
Okay. All right. So, Phil, have you made your post?
Yes, I do. I'm the Team Wednesday, so viewing in teams is a feature as well. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to Release 19. I think SLS has always been dynamic, right? A work in progress. It will always be built for teachers, by teachers. And I think the team has been really proactive and responsive to user feedback and needs listening to the graph. So with every new release, there's improvement to the system to make using SLS a better platform. So I'm really looking forward to R19 with its host of features. I think the top two, my top two rather, would be firstly the discussion component. I think as a humanities teacher where I really look at getting students to share opinions in class, comparable favorite that I think most people are familiar with is Padlet. And now discussion component is within the activity. So you can imagine that in terms of its ease of use and being able to see students' responses coming out just like on your screen, I think that makes it a compelling rival, okay? And I noted that in the sandbox experimentations, I can view student participation. So I think that really helps me to monitor and make that essence of collaborative learning come alive. I can look at how many students have indicated a number of posts and also look at those, perhaps speak to students who have not put in anything as well. So that's one discussion component. The second one has to be the enhanced lesson authoring, which in short is autosave. Okay, so I still recall when I was involved in the SLS Design Challenge, I think this was in 2018, 2019, and I was working with my teammates to design this SLS lesson at that point in time. And we were all constantly reminding one another, please remember to click the save little icon at the top. If not, once we navigate away from the page accidentally, it's gone. Yeah, so I think with each improvement, new release, this lesson authoring has become a lot easier. And now with R19, okay, with the autosave, so literally, I think if I understand, if you click within a component, you can edit it. You click outside, it will autosave. It's great reassurance to me. Yeah, so these are my top two features. Yes.
Okay. So I just want to point out what Theophilia was sharing just now, which is the ability to see the participation in the discussion component. So if you look at my screen, you notice that I can click on this View Participation button. You notice that I can see how many posts were made by the students from the different teams. Okay. So again, very convenient tool and also a little different from the interactive thinking tool component where students can only post once and then comment afterwards. Whereas over here under the discussion component, students can make multiple posts. So the discussion is more ongoing. Oh, and that reminds me, there was a feature I forgot to mention just now. Thank you, Derek, for bringing it up, which is the ability to create dynamic links. So dynamic links, if you look at the slide, is the ability to jump within the lesson to various activities. So you can use it to create a learning menu, or perhaps you can put some creativity into it and you see how you can use it for creating a gamified lesson, like an escape room, for example. Yeah, so thank you, Derek, for mentioning that as well. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to show you how I can assign this as a team activity. And as I'm doing so, Derek and Theophilia, if you don't mind, you can move on to the next part about the free response questions. So I'll be getting them to think about how to apply any of the flows features discussed today and what are some questions they might have regarding the new flows or features. Okay. Just to show you how I can assign this as a team activity. So previously, we were only able to assign this as a team quiz for free response and audio response questions. Now you can assign any question component as a team activity to promote greater collaboration among your students. All right, so let's take a look at that. Okay, so after I get to the assignment settings, I just need to click on the drop-down bar and set this as a team activity. And as usual, I just apply subgroups as teams. All right, add them and then save this and assign it. And moving on to some other features, I'd also like to point out that within the class groups, for the forum, there's been some enhancements there. So now you can see that I can create topics to organize posts. And if you have existing posts, don't worry, it'll be filed under a topic that says previous posts. Yeah. So if you're teaching math, for example, you might want to organize it as maybe algebra on one side, quadratic equations as another topic, so on and so forth. Or if you're teaching literature, like me, for example, you might want to organize topics by characters. In addition, you have your usual poll. One thing to know is that you can actually allow students to create polls if they like to. Another thing I like to point out is also the ability to create email notifications. So if I go to my edit profile and I go to set email notifications, rather than clicking refresh to see the notification panel, to see whether there's any new notifications there, I can actually set SLS to email me with new notifications as and when they come up. And this also applies equally for students. So for your students, they can receive email notifications when you've created a new assignment for them or set a new resource. Okay, Derek and Theophilia, are you ready with your discussions? Let me show you how you can actually monitor their responses. Okay. If you notice, I can actually expand, see the full response. Okay, so if they have written a longer response, it will be able to show the whole thing in full. All right, for the first question, which is, how will you apply any of the flows features discussed today? All right, perhaps Derek could tell me more about how you use dynamic links for the escape room.
Yeah, so I think we've been actually using a lot of external apps, Google Sites, Google Forms for the flow of an escape room. Pupils get to have different choices and move on to different activities or pages. So now with this function available in SLS, I think that enables us to make use of SLS itself and actually have all these features in. Yeah.
And what about Theophilia?
Okay, yes, so I think I was trying to reflect a bit of what my typical student might respond, so maybe a little bit, a line or two, and then I'll be called upon to elaborate on it. So I think here I've mentioned station rotation model. Okay, so I think that's a method used in blended learning where we really plan for face-to-face or asynchronous interactions with the students. So I think allowing students to access different activities within a course, for example, the dynamic links will make it a lot easier, right? I think SLS, a lot of it hinges upon user interface, user interactions, user experience, having to click one less item. So in this case, the column at the left, the drawer, right? And allowing them to access the other activities makes it a lot easier for me to direct students to which activity that they may prefer or according to their level of readiness. Yeah. Another one I wanted to talk about as well was the planner and quick assign. I think that I can foresee the planner being very helpful for me to schedule lessons in sequence with my students because as of current, okay, I like to use an Excel sheet to keep track of what's been done each lesson and then plan my next lesson accordingly. Okay, so I think if I have the planner, both myself and my students, we're able to keep track of how my lessons are sequenced. Like they will be able to see the flow a lot better. Yeah. Another way as well is that in alignment with the shared department resource that actually encourages teachers to collaborate on SLS, I would see that the use of the planner to help us coordinate meetings or even quick attach a resource that we found on Community Gallery to discuss during the actual meeting. Any one of us as a co-teacher could park that resource in 2 weeks before the meeting. From a teacher collaborative point of view, I think that these are very helpful ways to help me use the new features. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for your sharing just now. That was quite extensive. You were sharing from the student point of view, from the teacher point of view, and even from the department point of view. I'll ask Derek how he would use the quick assign and planner.
I think the planner will be quite useful for the teachers to actually give our students an overview of what is going to be happening in the days or the weeks ahead because we can pre-assign activity events and they're able to see on their planner and then we can actually start putting in activities or even resources as Theophilia mentioned earlier. The students would then have a better preparation of what I'm going to be learning in the next few days.
Maybe if I could add on to Derek, I think in a secondary school context where each student owns a PLD, right? We're really trying to help them to become more self-directed, right? Self-directed learner. And I think the planner especially serves as a very helpful personal productivity tool. So I think I'll be really looking to equip students to build familiarity with using the planner within SLS, leveraging the different functions and abilities, learn to park in their own events as well, because I think that what we call executive functioning skills, where they learn how to manage their schedules, manage their time, these are very critical skills that our students need to build. So I think having that tool there really encourages us to want to encourage its use with our students.
I'm really glad that Theophilia mentioned this from the student perspective as well, because part of the reason why we're creating this planner is not just for teachers to assign homework more often to their students, but also to make it easier for students to find their assignments at the right time, at the right place. Because sometimes, I'm sure you've heard from your students also that, oh, I can't find the assignment because there are just too many there. But now, with the planner feature, they just need to see, what lesson is coming up, and when they click on it, they'll see the assignment or resource that you've attached. Another thing to point out that we are not able to show here, but for the planner feature, students are actually able to see assignments that are due over the next 3 days. So it hints or nudges them to quickly complete these assignments before they become overdue. All right, I'm moving on to question 2. Let's see what our guests have to say. So what are some questions you might have regarding the new flows and features? Let's take a look. So let's look at Derek's response first. Okay, using dynamic links for escape room, would it be possible to hide the activities so pupils can only access them through the links? Okay, unfortunately right now you can't hide the activities, but what you can do is you can actually hide the activity number. What's your main reason for hiding this, if I may ask?
I think because sometimes we may not want to offer the choices easily to the pupils, so they don't know what's coming up. So they can only access certain pages of flow by clicking through the correct answer. And actually building on your point earlier about hiding the section numbers and stuff, I realized one of the new features was this seamless transition between an activity, a lesson, and a course, where we don't actually have to create a whole new lesson, and we can just create standalone single activities, which will be very useful when we do our quick assigns.
Oh, that reminds me of something that Theophilia mentioned just now, which is the word course. So just FYI for our audience out there, in R19 we won't differentiate so much between lessons or courses anymore. In fact, as what Derek was saying, all you need to do is just add another activity and becomes a lesson, and just feel free to add another section and it just automatically adds on. Previously, I remember teachers were like, oh, I have a lesson now, how do I add it to a course? How do I expand it? You don't have to worry about it, you can just simply add and it will just expand itself automatically without any adjustment, without having to find some way around it. For some reason, I can't see it over here. If you don't mind, maybe you could just read out your response.
Yeah, I think for me it's not so much questions as it is maybe also thoughts for future releases or improvement. Yeah, so I think I really want to help my students enjoy using SLS. I think it's working both ways, encouraging teachers and students as well. Looking at the planner feature, if it could be color-coded according to the assignment progress or status. I understand that it would actually reflect what assignments are due in the next 3 days for the student, and that's a very helpful prompt. But I think as a very visual learner or visual processor, as it were, I think having those color code options may be an interesting feature. Yeah. Otherwise, if not, I'm really looking forward to trying out the new flows and features, having the compact components to actually select the various things that I could do with the kids. I'm really excited to try that out, especially the autosave function. Oh, yeah, that really is a big win for me. Yes.
There was something else you mentioned, the ability to autosave. So let me just highlight that to the audience. So if you can look at my screen, this is my favorite thing, which is the recently used questions, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to choose a multi-part question here. And if you notice, there's no save button anymore, right? And that's not because like we remove your ability to save, right? Rather, if you just click anywhere outside the box, you'll notice that it saves already. And how do I edit? I just click within. Or you can click on this pen button next to it. Yeah. Oh, and that reminds me of something. I know for some teachers, they might have a lot of instructions to give, or they might create a very big learning menu. So if you want to do, you can actually click on the expand question body button here to have a full screen, have all the space that you want to write. Okay. I see there are some comments. Let's take a look at it. Can teachers use the planner to book each other's time if they are not in the same school? Okay, that's possible, but you have to bear in mind that this planner is based on class groups. So if the teachers are not in the same class group, then they won't be able to do so. But coming back to what Theophilia mentioned just now, which is you have a department group, is that right?
Yep.
And you say it was EdTech.
Yeah, maybe an EdTech committee where we are looking at EPAC conversations or using those packages in SLS. Yeah, we could. I guess we're in the same school. Yeah, that will make it a lot easier for us to coordinate. Yeah.
Maybe you can consider EdTech zonal or EdTech cluster class group. Yeah? And then when you have a cluster or zonal group, then of course you can have the calendar shared with other teachers as well from different schools.
And Justin, I think another thing is regarding the pinning of the group. Yeah, so when we pin the groups, it makes it easier for us to actually see the events in our planner. Yeah.
That's a very important point, and actually a feature that's not very well known. So if I was to come back to my planner, you notice that it doesn't show every single class group. It automatically shows only those class groups that are pinned. If you are logging in after 7 June for the first time and you're wondering, hey, how come not all my class groups are being shown? Just a reminder to go to your class group tab and just pin the relevant class groups so that they'll show up in the planner automatically. The reason why we didn't make everything appear was not to overload people upon the first time using it. Let's move on to our next question. Is there a way to set a quiz such that students have to keep on doing it until they get a certain number of questions correct? Okay. So I just like to point out that we don't want to make students suffer by having to click over and over again. And also, at the same time, if you have a multiple choice question, you can only click it 3-4 times before you get it right eventually. But yes, to answer your question, you are able to allow students to do so, not just as a progressive quiz, where you can set the number of attempts, but also through self-study, which is actually another thing that's coming up for R19. When you actually set your assignments, you can allow students to do it as a self-study assignment, and they can attempt it as many times as they wish on their own.
In fact, I think one of the new features is that students can actually copy the lessons to their own drive and reattempt that.
Yeah, that's right. And let me see if I can turn this into student view. Okay, and if I'm not wrong, just to point out, if you can see my screen, right, there's this new page here for students, which is the self-study list. Okay, sorry, I don't really have much to see because I haven't been studying as a student, but they will actually be able to see resources from not just my drive, MOE library, but also assignments or resources that they took from the class group, from their teachers, and see all their self-study attempts on this page. So please encourage your students to do self-study as far as possible. So moving on to the next question, will we be able to have a peek as a student how the discussion feature will look? So let me preview this as a student. Yeah. Okay, and let me see this as a discussion component. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, as a student, you'll be able to see it's quite similar to the forum. You can just create a new post over here, and maybe something like "Hello World." And students can, besides putting in pictures, which I think Derek demonstrated earlier, you can also put in sound as well as attach other files. Your math, chemistry components, of course, there as usual. One thing interesting is that you can actually enable or disable comments. So if the student feels that they don't want people to give their comments about it, they can always turn it off. Another question, you're now wondering, how will discussion differ from interactive thinking tool? Derek, do you think you'd like to try and attempt this question?
For interactive thinking too, the pupil would actually have to respond first before it's able to actually see their friends' responses. Whereas in the discussion, it's actually more like the forum where you can just post and you can even see your friends' responses even before you have responded to it. Yeah.
So to go to another level, which is, how would this then be different from the forum? So for the forum where you can create polls, for the discussion component, you can't. And another reason why we bring this discussion component into the lesson is so that it flows from activity to activity rather than having to jump outside of it, go to the class group and then find the forum. And then by the time you find it and start your post, you forgot what the lesson was about. So it's more convenient and neater to have that discussion component within here. And as Derek was mentioning, you can also make multiple posts without feeling restricted to just one.
Maybe just to add in there as well, I think aesthetics, right? Every little step that I can minus makes SLS a lot more endearing to use. Yeah, so I think in response to that question, if I were to add, I think having the topic there, the teacher can just simply create a topic and then actually students can actually start posting. I don't have to go through the discussion forum, okay, 1 column, 2 column, 3 column, okay, and then so on and so forth. So I think that was a big plus for myself. And another thing is that I think the boxes in which the students respond, they actually commensurate with the length of the response. That's something I noticed in our sandbox experiments. So I think that's something I really appreciated as well. Yeah.
Oh, and in case it sounds like we are making the discussion components sound better than ITT, just also want to point out that, of course, another feature about the interactive thinking tool is that you can set multiple columns, right? So you can have your see, think, wonder, so on and so forth. Whereas for the discussion, it's actually kind of meant for just one question at a time.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. All right, let's see if there's any other questions or any comments. Oh, does this mean that gamification features will work for all assignments? Okay, I'm not sure what the does this mean thing refer to, but generally, yes, you can turn on gamification. Or perhaps the person is talking about how we can go from activity to lesson to course. Yes, you can do so. Yeah. Thank you for that question. That's a good point to raise. Also, would like to encourage everyone to use gamification where possible. Yeah. Have you all tried using gamification in your lessons? Yeah, okay. Do your students love it?
I think made them very competitive because they were all trying to get onto the leaders board. So it was a very nice lesson too. And it was done over a span of a few days actually, as we covered different topics, concepts on each day, and just keep building on from there.
Okay, let's see if there's any more comments coming in. Okay, teacher cannot view all students' planner. Okay, not quite sure what that means. Is the person trying to say that they can't view everything from the student's point of view? If that's the case, that's correct. As I mentioned earlier, planners are usually tied to class groups. So if you see my screen over here, right, it's usually tied to class groups. Although there is the personal one, right, and personal, as the word implies, it's only for you and for no one else. I just want to point out one way the teacher planner differs from the student planner, and that's actually the ability to import calendars. So I think Derek was mentioning about Google Calendar just now, right? So actually, does your school use Google Calendar as well?
Same here as well.
Right.
So I think.
So for example, if you have maybe your school events, the public holidays, so on and so forth, you can actually export it from Google and then import it into SLS. Just a note for some people who are wondering, it doesn't synchronize, so it doesn't mean that it will always match the Google Calendar. It's only accurate at the time of import. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's see if there's any other questions coming up. Rating, perhaps, Derek and Theophilia, are there any other features that you might be interested in?
I noticed with these team activities, we are actually able to put in more question types. Previously, it was just limited to, for example, free response questions, whereas now we can also use MCQs and all the other different question types as a team activity. I think that would facilitate a lot more discussion and collaboration.
That's right, yeah. And hopefully reduce marking as well, because you don't have to do it individually, right? Theophilia, any other features for you?
Yeah, I think most of them actually, I love the way they touched on the features in response to the questions that we had. I think that from the whole basket of features, right, I am still really looking forward to trying the discussion component. There are many others that really make the whole user experience a lot easier. But I think, as mentioned, it's a buffet and we will select what we need. As a humans teacher and really being someone really big on giving students voice, right? I really want to know this feature, use it well, build familiarity with it, really view participation. I think that's a huge plus because you can't do that in Padlet. Yeah, know it, build familiarity, and then slowly explore the other features that are available as well. I think I've also gotten started with the learning progress, right? I understand that from the students' interface, they can also now see their learning progress in relation to assignments, even those with the automated feedback. So I think whilst I'm building my own capacity and familiarity with its use, I would also want to look for opportunities to help students get familiar with these things that are available to them as well. Yeah, I believe very strongly in empowering students, so I think that's something that, you know, as I navigate, I want to show them that, hey, I'm a lifelong learner, so learn along with me. Yeah, so yes, I'll be a ready explorer, yes.
I really like that Theophilia mentioned that she wants to role model for students what it's like to be a lifelong learner. And I think that's something the ministry is trying to encourage. We have one last question. All right, so would the interface change to make it more appealing visually for primary school students? Okay, let me turn to the assignment cards. So the assignment cards have actually been redesigned, so it's more obvious if it's a new assignment or if a new section has been added, for example. Let me show you the student view instead. Yeah, we've tried our best to, like you can see from the different statuses as well, whether it's incomplete or paused, to make it more visually appealing for primary school students. But of course, we have to take into account that we're also catering to secondary and JC students, right? So if you have any feedback or ideas about how this could be more appealing, please feel free to write in and let us know. We've come to the end of the Q&A section. Is there anything I've forgotten, Derek or Theophilia? There's something at the back of my mind, but I can't quite remember what it is.
The TCEF.
Oh,
yes,
TCEF.
yes,
Okay.
Jensen.
I'm sure everyone here has registered for TCEF or the Teachers Conference and Excel Fest that's coming up 30th May to 1st June, right? So please don't forget to check out the SLS booth. I promise you that there's going to be a very fun superhero-themed quiz that comes with personalized recommendations and tips on how to use SLS better. But not only that, because it's also showing more about the future of SLS. So for example, you mentioned things like being able to view participation in the discussion component. If you actually look out for our future plans, you'll see how we plan to leverage on this and make it even more, I would say, maybe analytical or make it even more fine-tuned to help teachers prompt students who perhaps might not be responding much, as well as you mentioned using class groups for your department or for your committee, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't want to review too much now, but I can look forward to certain professional groups or teacher-only groups in our future plans for SLS as well. So a lot of exciting new features coming up that build on some of the features that we've discussed today. Please join us at the SLS booth and explore it. and hopefully share with your colleagues as well about what features excite you or intrigue you. I think that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you, Derek, and thank you, Theophilia, for joining us. And thank you, of course, our audience for taking some time off this busy afternoon. I know it's almost the end of term 2, everyone's like rushing to listen to the new features for SLS R19, again, coming out after 7 June. Thank you, and see you next time.